Well, everybody can see that Pitt's having success on the recruiting trail, but one big question is why? We're looking at the answers behind Pitt's successful June recruiting in May and April and March too, all right here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. It's Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. You see the website address right down there below. You know it is the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. And of course, message boards to talk with other Pitt fans all day, every day about everything going on in the world of Pitt sports. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com is the place you want to be. Keep up on everything going on in Pitt sports world, and of course to talk with other Pitt fans about it as well. And then you know what we have here. It's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You never miss anything that we do here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We have these daily Morning Pitt videos. We have our live show we do every Wednesday night. We'll do it tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. Me and Jim Hammond will be talking about it. Talking about everything going on in Pitt sports, and then we release new videos whenever we need to. So you never will miss any of it. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. More commitments came in yesterday. One new commitment came in yesterday, bringing the total for the class to 16. Pitt's recruiting 2024 recruiting class up to 16 commitments. 3 of them have not yet made their announcements public. 2 committed over the weekend. 1 committed yesterday morning. All 3, we believe, are visitors from the weekend. So if you look at that official visit weekend, there were 14 recruits who came in total. Remember, 13 that we know about, plus the mystery visitor. One of them was already committed, so that takes it down to 13. And then out of those 13, there are 5 who have committed. That's pretty good. Humming right along. And I think there's a pretty decent chance for Pitt to get a couple more out of that group of 13. You're going to start running into a numbers crunch, particularly at a couple positions where they are probably starting to fill up. And I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the week when we look at it and these 3 unannounced commitments become public, I wouldn't be surprised if we look at a handful of positions and say, all right, I don't know if they really have many more spots to take at that position. They might be getting full at a few of those spots. We'll see how that kind of plays out. That's sort of natural as you move through, particularly when you get as many early commitments as Pitt did in the class of 2024 with all the commitments through the spring. When they came into June, which is the big recruiting month, they came into June already sitting on 11 commitments for the class. You're going to run out of spots pretty quick at a few positions. Things start to fill up. We'll talk about that more as some of those areas come into focus. But there is a bigger picture topic here, and we talked a little bit about it yesterday when we kind of recapped the weekend and went over the commitments that had been announced. Alan Bryant and Davion Pritchard talked about just sort of the reactions, some of the reactions from the other recruits who visited and kind of how they responded to their. I mean, it was all positive. Everything coming out of the weekend was positive, and that follows up a spring where that was really positive for Pitt in recruiting as well. Whether it was the commitments that they got, like I say, coming into June with 11 total commitments, or it was just the visitors that they brought on campus and the reactions they were getting from some top recruits nationally who came to campus for visits, for unofficial visits. It all adds up to a lot of momentum that's been building for Pitt in this 2024 recruiting class. And I'm not going to go so far as to say this is the recruiting bump. You remember we talked so much after the ACC championship that the class of 2023 would see a recruiting bump, and maybe that did or did not come to pass. I'm still of the mind that they did get some momentum out of winning the ACC championship in 2021. I'm still of the mind that the class of 2023, both the kids they signed and the kids that they were able to draw considerable significant interest from, I'm of the mind that it did represent a bump. But I'm not going to, I'm not going to drag that storyline out and talk about this 2024 class in those terms. But I think there are a few things to know and understand when it comes to the recruiting right now and it comes to the efforts that the staff is making. And when it comes to just the overall picture and why they have the momentum that they have. Yes, the on-field product absolutely does matter. And I think there was a bump from that success in 2021. I think there was a bump from the ACC championship and the Biletnikoff Award and the Heisman Trophy finalists and all the things that team accomplished. I think there was a bump from that. But it's not always just a 1 year, oh, you had a great year, now all the recruits are going to come flocking. I think the more you're able to stack successful seasons on top of each other, the more, the more success you're going to have on the recruiting trail. And when you look at it, and we've talked about this a bunch of times, with Pitt having 20 wins over the last 2 seasons, going 9-4 last year, beating UCLA in the Sun Bowl. To follow up the 11-3 season with the ACC championship, you've now got back-to-back years of strong success. I mean, strong, quantifiable, and qualifiable success that really looks like the hallmarks of a program that's building into a consistently successful outfit. And I think that's what Pitt looks like right now. And, we've talked before about local recruits being too close to the matter, of local recruits maybe seeing Pitt up close and personal, which may or may not always be a good thing, whereas recruits from outside the area or outside the region might be able to take a longer view of it, a bigger picture view of the situation. They look at it and say, wow, you won 20 games. A local recruit might be able to tell you about Western Michigan. A local recruit might be able to tell you about Georgia Tech. A kid from Georgia, a kid from Florida, a kid from Virginia or Maryland is probably not as familiar with some of the pratfalls of the last 2 seasons. And they're able to, I think, and I've said this a bunch of times, I think with recruits from outside the area, the coaches are able to control the narrative a little more for a variety of reasons. But, I think when you're local, the recruits themselves obviously have an up-close personal view of what's happening with the program and the success they're having, or where they're good or where they're bad, or all those kinds of things. Whereas the recruits from outside the area, their perception of Pitt is largely coming from the picture that is painted by the coaching staff. The coaches can control the narrative and the storyline far more with those recruits outside the area. And so they can put the focus on 20 wins, an ACC championship, a Sun Bowl win over UCLA, one of however many teams in the country to win 20 games in the last 2 years, one of however many ACC teams to do this, draft success number, how many teams have had this many players drafted over this year or last year. They're able to emphasize those points, and maybe those recruits from Georgia and Florida and Maryland and DC and Virginia aren't quite as well versed to know some of the other side of that. Oh, yeah, you did this, but you lost to Western Michigan. Oh, you did this, but you lost to Georgia Tech. That's just not really part of the story. And so it resonates. You're able to just keep the focus on the success, and the success resonates. And the success that Pitt has had is resonating with the recruits. And I think there are a couple sides to this thing, all right? And I think where the success has the biggest impact, it's not in landing the commitments. When Davion Pritchard or Allen Bryant or these other 3 unannounced commitments, or the guys who are already committed, they didn't necessarily commit because of the success that Pitt is having. But what happened, though, and I think this is the case for a lot of these guys, the success that Pitt is having, the prominence that Pitt is rising to, and sort of the position they put themselves in the ACC, which is a Power 5 conference, it's getting these kids on campus. It's raising the profile of Pitt football. It's making Pitt football look more relevant on the national scene. It's putting Pitt into that conversation of schools that are relevant on the national scene. And that's drawing the interest to then get the kids on campus for a visit. And that process sort of started in the spring with the unofficial visits. But then there are certainly guys this summer, who are coming in for official visits now for the first time. And I think a big part of the draw, or what's opening the door, is that success. So if the success opens the door to get the kid at least thinking about Pitt, the coaches are then able to walk in and start building those relationships and try and use those relationships to get them on campus. So that's where the success comes in. I think it sets the table for the visits and gets the recruits on campus. And then we get to the real kicker. And this is the part that's probably underrated when it comes to Pitt recruiting, but it shouldn't be, and it shouldn't be something that Pitt fans forget about or ignore or overlook, because they've been told about it a bunch of times. And you know who has told you about it? Jeff Capel has told you about it. And he's talked about this a bunch of times in the last 6 months. He has brought this up multiple times when he's talked about the challenges of recruiting during the COVID year, when it was a permanent dead period and you couldn't bring recruits in for visits. And he said that, look, and I'm paraphrasing. I didn't go look up a specific quote from Jeff Capel because he said this enough times that I've sort of committed the main points to memory. He said, look, it makes all the world of difference when we can bring recruits to Pitt to see the city, to see the campus, to see the environment, to see the building and what it is and what the whole area really is like. And Jeff Capel has said it himself. He said that, I didn't really know what Pitt was like before I got here and started seeing it and started living in it and being in it. I didn't really understand how nice it is. And he said, I can't count the number of times that we've brought kids and their families in on visits, and they'll say, Coach, I never thought Pitt was like this. I never thought Pittsburgh was like this. I never thought that this is what it would be like. And Jeff Capel has mentioned that multiple times when he's talked about the challenges of his first few seasons. That was one of them. That it was really difficult to get the kids they wanted during that COVID year because they couldn't bring them in for visits. You add on top of that the challenges of, struggling, the program struggling for the previous 4 or 5 years or however many it was of the Kevin Stallings years and then first year or two of Jeff Capel. And you ended up with a really challenging situation. But that key point about the importance of getting guys on campus and getting them to actually see what Pitt is. Capel mentioned it a bunch of times, and I think it applies on the football side as well. I really do. And there are recruits have said things like this. I didn't expect it to be like that. I came in from the airport and we drove through this tunnel and we came out of the tunnel. I was like, wow, there's a city. I couldn't believe it. And if you're in Pittsburgh, if you're from Pittsburgh, if you know Pittsburgh, you read those quotes and you know exactly what they're talking about. And maybe, I've lived here for, what year is this, 2023? I've lived here for more than a quarter century. I moved out here in 1997. So I've come out of the Parkway, I've come out of the Fort Pitt tunnels hundreds of times. And I don't really notice it anymore because I'm thinking about which lane I need to get in and which way I want to go. But I still remember the first time I came out of that tunnel and looked up and said, God, look at this place. This is incredible. They put it in the movie, right? And you probably can still remember one of the first times you really noticed coming out of the tunnel, like, wow, there's the city. And that's the first impression. And if you think about it too, if you're a visitor from out of town, if you're a kid coming in from out of town, a family coming in from out of town, and you're coming in from the airport, it's pretty boring. There's not much to see. And you go into this tunnel, and it's probably going to be like any other tunnel. You're going to come out on the other side, and you'll still be driving on this highway, and eventually you'll probably get to Pitt's campus. I mean, who knows? What's going to happen? It's probably just going to be more highway driving. Who knows? Is there a turnpike or something? And then, just in a tunnel, eventually going to get out of the tunnel. What? Where did this city come from? This is incredible. And then they take you deeper into the city and you see the campus and you see Oakland. You see the best parts of Oakland and the best parts of the campus. You see the facilities and you see how it's right next to the Steelers. And you see that, holy cow, look at this place. This is a great place. This is a really great place. And all of a sudden now Pitt seemed like a very real possibility because they had this success on the field. All right. They, that convinces you to come in and take a visit. You come in and take a visit and you're blown away by the location, by what it's like in Pittsburgh, by how the city feels. And I mean, of course, they're showing you all the best parts. I mean, they're not taking you to the parts of Oakland I lived in when I went to college. Maybe they should. Maybe they should take them down to Ward Street or Semple Street. I think Semple Street appeals to a certain type of personality, and maybe that's the type of personality they're trying to recruit to play safety or something. There were definitely people I knew on Semple Street who hit like a safety. But they're showing them the best parts. I mean, they're putting the best parts forward. They're putting the best foot forward when it comes to the campus and the city and the facilities and all of those things. And so they get that, right? So you've got this on-field success. You've got this great place to live. You've got these relationships with the coaches. And now there's a new element that I think Pat Narduzzi has been working in more now, and maybe he's been saying it for a few years, but I've picked up on it a few times in interviews. He's been saying everything you want to do, everything you want to accomplish in terms of your career, you can do it right here. You can do it at Pitt with these relationships that we have, with this place that we have. You can do it here. You don't need to go to X. And I mean, he probably doesn't name a school, but you don't need to go to this school or that school or that school. You can come to Pitt and be a first-round draft pick because there's been a first-round draft pick at Pitt, each of the last 2 years. Really, 3 guys in the last 2 years. You can work your way up to the NFL. You can be a 2 or 3 star recruit and get drafted if you come to this place. You can win a conference championship. You can be in the playoff conversation. You can win 20 games over 2 years. You can do all of those things at Pitt, and you can do it in this great setting with these great academics, with these great life skills, with these great relationships, with these great coaches, and all of these, you know what I mean? Like, that's the pitch right now, is you can do all of the things you want to do at Pitt. It's almost stealing that Georgia Tech, whatever it was, valedictorian or whatever speech. Do you remember that from a few years ago? If you want to do all this, you're at Georgia Tech. You can do that. I mean, that's what the pitch is now, is you can do those things at Pitt. I always feel like an underrated part of recruiting, and something that I would probably emphasize. Well, I don't know how much I'd emphasize it, but I would always have it in my back pocket, okay? Because what's one of the biggest negative recruiting pitches against Pitt? It's attendance, right? It's attendance on Saturdays. It's attendance at Heinz Field or Acrisure Stadium. And you know what? That's a losing battle. You're never going to beat Ohio State for attendance. You're never going to beat Penn State for attendance. You're never going to beat Michigan or West Virginia for attendance. You're not going to win the attendance battle. But you don't have to win the attendance battle. You don't have to, okay? And I wouldn't bring this up all the time, but if I ran into a recruit and his family and they brought up attendance, or I could kind of get a sense that they were thinking it, I'd have this in my back pocket all the time. I'd say, you know what? You're right. There's some great atmospheres out there. Some great places to play football. There are. And we think we have a really great atmosphere here, but I'm not going to lie. I mean, if you're Pat Narduzzi, you can say this. I'm not going to lie. I was in the Big Ten for however many years, 7 years or something like that. I played it. I coached at Michigan, at Ohio State, at Penn State. These are amazing places. It's a great college football environment. It's a lot of fun to be a part of. I think we have a great environment here. Those are great environments. There's no question. And you're going to be in those environments 7 days out of the year. 7. Where do you want to live for the other 358 days? Where do you want to live for the other 359 days if it's a leap year? Where do you want to live for the other 358 days in the calendar year? Because that football environment is great, but that's 7 Saturdays out of your year. And the other 358 days, you still have to live here. And you still have to be a part of that campus environment. And so where would you rather live? And I mean, again, he's probably not going to say it like this, but where would you rather live? State College or Pittsburgh? Columbus or Pittsburgh? Morgantown or Pittsburgh? Blacksburg or Pittsburgh? Where would you rather? Knoxville or Pittsburgh? Where would you rather live? Where's the place you want? Because you can achieve all the football success and further your career, and you could do it in this place, which is a pretty special place, a pretty great place to be. And Jeff Capel will testify to it. Pat Narduzzi will testify to it. And a whole bunch of recruits will testify to it. That when you get here and you become part of it and you see what the community's like and what the environment's like and what the atmosphere is like and what the area is like, you find it pretty appealing. And it's a pretty great place to be. And I think that's the sales pitch, and I think it's a big part of what's working. And you know what? And this isn't new for Pat Narduzzi. He has always done well on official visits. I lost count of what their percentage was. He'll tell you it's like 80%. They get 80% of the guys they bring in on official visits. It may or may not be around that number. They start playing with semantics about who they really want or who they don't. But suffice to say, Since 2015, when Narduzzi arrived, they've been really good at landing guys from official visits. And I think a big part of it is bringing people here and showing them what this place is. And now, this year, more than any other year in Narduzzi's time, he's able to attract a higher caliber of recruits because they've had that on-field success over the last 2 years. It's rolling. It's rolling at a high level, and I think by the time we get to the end of the month, we're going to say it's rolling at an even higher level than before. I think maybe by the end of the week, if a few more of these names get announced, I think we're going to look at it and say, holy cow, they are killing it on the recruiting trail right now. Because they are. They're having a really good spring, and June is off to a pretty hot start as well. We keep adding new names to the official visit list for this weekend. We will cover all of that, of course, on Thursday with the official visit preview episode. So stay tuned to that. And, of course, stay tuned to the message boards at Panther-Lair.com, where we keep adding names literally every day. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's on the message board. Just last night posted a new receiver who's coming in to visit this weekend. So that's a big one to keep an eye on. Pretty intriguing guy. Drawing some comparisons to Steve Breston on the message board. Some people are seeing some Steve Breston, in which it's not a bad comparison to make. If you're getting compared to Steve Breston, I'd say you've got some potential. So go check that out. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Before you go, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Hope your week got off to a good start with Monday, and hope you have a good Tuesday today. We'll be back again to talk to you tomorrow on the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.